long and complicated gospel, and we have just a few moments for homily. So let me offer us a few observations about this gospel. The very end of the gospel, Jesus says, don't tell anybody about this miracle. That's called the Messianic secret, and it's found especially in the Gospel of Mark. You'll find this over and over again, especially in Mark. What Jesus is saying, he does not want to be known as a miracle worker. This does not describe who the Messiah is. And they cannot preach the Messiah, they cannot proclaim who he is until they have seen him suffer, die, and rise from the dead. Until that time, he says, don't tell anybody, because you don't understand me until you have seen me suffer, die, and rise from the dead. That's a Messianic secret. The other thing that's remarkable about this gospel is to understand the historical and cultural context in which it was shaped. The Gospels were written by men, and they were written for men. Therefore, in the culture of the time, which is a patriarchal culture, women had very little attention. Notice in this interchange here, the synagogue official who is prominent and he's rich and he is a powerful fellow, he's named Jairus. The woman, on the other hand, she's on the edge. She's out on the outskirts. She's on the edge of the community, and she is not named because she's not that important. In the community of the time, Jairus is named. She is poor and she is ritually unclean. According to the Torah, the book of Leviticus, you'll find way back in the book of, when she was having an issue of blood, a flow of blood, she was ritually unclean. Therefore, anybody she touched had to go to the temple and go through a ritual cleansing, so that she was an outsider. She was on the margins. She was isolated from the community, and especially here with this crowd around Jesus. But Jesus is the one who touches and welcomes a person from the margins. And he is the one who welcomes a woman who is unnamed. She is poor and she is isolated. And Jesus interrupts the moment to include her. Now, that's a teaching in itself, that when we look at the primitive world in which the Gospels were shaped, we have to introduce the Gospel into the culture in which we live and find a meaning in the place we find ourselves. We don't live back 2,000 years ago in a Semitic patriarchal culture. We live in a culture where we're searching for more recognition for all people, especially those on the margins. How to include the people on the margins, how to welcome the people who are unnamed, not the powerful, the rich, not those who are prominent, but those on the edges, on the margins and the fringes, those that sometimes we say, you're unclean, you don't qualify, you're on the margins. And Jesus says, no, welcome the people on the margins. They're wounded, they're hurt, they need to be included. They are represented by this nameless woman who is considered ritually unclean according to the Semitic culture of the time. It's good for us to think about that. So when we journey through this day, somebody who appears not to be very important, it could be somebody who is nameless. Okay, it could be somebody you meet in a store. It could be whoever, public servant of some kind. Include the person. Call the person by name. She's not called by name here. She's nameless. Include somebody who feels left out. Perhaps somebody in your family. Perhaps somebody whom you know in your community. Perhaps somebody that feels left out by the church. Include them, bless them. Including them, you bless them. You give them a certain introduction to healing. I think that's about all you need about this gospel at this time of the morning. But keep that in mind. The wonder of Jesus Christ, God revealed to call, to include, and to bless people who are on the margins. Amen. We pause now for a moment of prayer.